Imagine losing literally everything you have overnight, just gone, all because of a single lie. And then watching the universe balance those scales in the most devastating way imaginable. Welcome to today's Explainer, guys. We're diving into a really profound, deeply emotional story today. It's all about trust, betrayal, and honestly, the ultimate, most satisfying arc of karma you'll probably ever hear.
A poor farmer was accused of stealing, but what happened next shocked an entire town. I mean, let that sink in for a second. That's the mystery we're unpacking right now. How does a tight-knit community suddenly turn on its absolute most honest man? And more importantly, how does the truth actually fight its way back into the light?
So, to really get this, we have to start with the number 6. 6 acres. That is the tiny patch of stubborn soil owned by our main guy, Daniel Carter. He wasn't rich, no massive estate, no fancy equipment, just a hardworking dad with an old iron shovel and heavily calloused hands. Daniel lived in this tiny, humble wooden cabin with the two people he loved more than anything in the world, his aging mom and his totally innocent 8-year-old daughter, Grace. Every single morning, way before the sun even peeked over the horizon, Daniel was out there in the freezing cold, just working those 6 acres. And every morning, like clockwork, little Grace would run barefoot to the door, begging her dad to come home before dark. Daniel would just kneel down, give her a smile, kiss her forehead, and whisper this daily promise. I promise if the fields let me. That right there, that's the absolute heart of this story. Daniel wasn't just hardworking. He had this unwavering, unshakable honesty about him. His grain was always pure. He never lied about the weight. He never jacked up prices unfairly. Because of that quiet, everyday integrity, he slowly earned the deep, unshakable trust of the entire town. And hey, in a small farming community, trust is literally more valuable than gold. But Daniel's quiet little life was on a total collision course with his biggest rival. Enter Victor Langford. Victor was the richest grain merchant in the whole county. But he didn't build his empire by being a good guy. Oh no, he built it entirely on fear. The farmers were terrified of him, the workers just kept their heads down, and shopkeepers knew to stay completely silent. For years, Victor ran the whole market with an iron fist. But here's the thing. As Daniel's reputation for honesty grew, people started buying from him instead. So every single coin Daniel earned honestly was a direct threat to Victor's massive, greedy empire.
You knew this tension had to snap, right? One afternoon, smack in the middle of a packed marketplace, Victor steps directly in front of Daniel's cart. The whole crowd just goes dead silent. Victor puts on this cold, mocking smile and asks him, "You really believe honesty can beat power?" And Daniel, he doesn't even flinch. He looks him dead in the eye and drops this absolute mic drop response. No, but honesty survives longer. Just, wow. It was such a fearless, brilliant comeback, and it completely humiliated Victor right there in front of everyone. But as our source material reminds us, humiliating a proud and powerful man, that is a very, very dangerous game.
And man, look how fast a life can just be obliterated. That very same night, under the cover of darkness, Victor's men sneak out and poison Daniel's crops. The leaves go black, the roots rot. Months of backbreaking labor just gone in hours. Then the next morning, Victor storms into the town council screaming about a theft. The guards toss Daniel's cabin, and suddenly they find Victor's gold ring, planted right there on the open. Before sunset, the trap fully snapped shut. With zero proof to defend himself, Daniel, his elderly mother, and little Grace were banished. No land, no home. Their entire existence wiped out in less than 24 hours. So now, picture this. The rain is just pouring down. Daniel is leading his terrified mother and his shaking daughter deep into this dark, unforgiving forest. They're abandoned, completely exiled by the exact same people Daniel had fed and treated so fairly. You can almost feel the heavy, crushing weight of that reality pressing down on them as they wander for hours. Until, finally, they stumble on a break in the rocks. A cave. It was freezing. It was pitch dark. And it was just completely silent. I want you to really put yourself in Daniel's worn-out shoes for a second. Think about that overwhelming, suffocating pain of having everything ripped away from you. The absolute betrayal by a town you totally trusted, sitting there in the damp dark, knowing you have no home, no land, and honestly no obvious second chance. It's the absolute rock bottom of despair. But it was shelter. And Sometimes shelter is just enough to keep you breathing. Actually, it was little Grace who pointed the cave out in the first place, bringing this tiny, flickering sliver of hope to her dad. They were together, they were safe from the freezing rain, and for that one single night, they survived. While their fate took a massive turn a few days later, Grace was exploring some of the dark corners of the cave, and she spots these loose stones stacked near the wall. She pulls them back, and no way. There it is, an old, dust-covered leather satchel. She opens it up. Gold coins. Enough gold to start over entirely. When Daniel saw what was in that bag, the sheer, overwhelming wave of relief just washed right over him. He closed his eyes, and for the very first time since his crops were poisoned, he cried. Not tears of pain. These were profound, breathtaking tears of real hope. So what does Daniel do? He takes that gold, and instead of using it for revenge, he channels every single ounce of his energy into resilience. He moves the family to a neighboring town. He buys much bigger fields. He builds a far stronger home for Grace and his mom. But here is the absolute most important part. He utterly refused to become bitter. The people in this new town, they didn't just respect him because he had money now. They respected him because of the incredible, unshakable character he showed after losing literally everything. But you know how small towns are? Word travels fast. Eventually, Victor Langford hears that the guy he ruined is somehow wealthier than ever. And Victor's insatiable, toxic greed just completely takes over. He starts thinking, well, if there was one bag of gold in that cave, there has to be more, right? Driven by pure, blind avarice, Victor heads out into that dark forest and finds the exact same cave, all by himself. And guys, we can literally track his downfall step by step. Step 1, Victor's greed actually pays off at first. He finds a second bag of gold hidden deep in the shadows. But step 2 is where karma finally catches up. He turns around to leave, but every single tunnel looks exactly identical. He is hopelessly lost. Step 3, days go by. His water runs out, his physical strength completely fades away. And then step 4, sitting all alone in the pitch black, Victor is forced to face the one single thing his money could never silence, his own conscience. For the very first time in his ruthless, greedy life, Victor just breaks down. He drops that heavy, completely useless gold onto the stone floor, and in the terrifying silence of that cave, he whispers the real truth. I destroyed a better man because I could never become one. Wow. It's such an incredibly powerful climax, isn't it? The villain finally recognizing his own emptiness. And right at that exact moment of pure surrender, this single ray of sunlight pierces the darkness and hits the cave floor. Victor follows it out. He manages to escape the cave, but the man who walked out was completely different from the monster who walked in. And the karma payoff here? Oh, it is so satisfying. Weeks later, Victor does the absolute unthinkable. He stands right in front of the town council and confesses to everything. He admits to poisoning Daniel's innocent crops. He admits to planting his own gold ring. He exposes every single lie he used to destroy a good man's life. The town council is so deeply ashamed that they literally pack up and make the long journey out to Daniel's new farm, just standing at his front gate to beg for his forgiveness. They look at Daniel and say, "We judged you without the truth." Daniel just looks at them quietly. He glances over at little Grace, who's happily playing in their massive new fields, and then he delivers this incredible, profound response. I lost my home because of your fear, but I found my future because I refused to lose myself. And with that, he simply closes the gate. He doesn't scream, he doesn't demand vengeance, he just closes it in complete, unshakable peace. Which really brings us to the ultimate moral of this whole explainer. Sometimes life tests honest people in the most brutal ways, but truth always finds its way back. The source material frames this so perfectly. Justice doesn't always have to look like revenge. Sometimes true justice is simply building a life so beautiful and being so incredibly resilient that the people who tried to break you can only stand at the gate and watch. So I want to turn this over to you guys because I really want you to think about this. What would you do if your entire community turned their backs on you over a lie? Was Daniel way too forgiving, or did he end up winning in the absolute best way possible? Tell me whose side you're on down in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will catch you all in the next one.